Number 10. Forgotten shipwrecks. In southern Italy, underwater archaeologists recently discovered roughly 40 shipwrecks off the coast of the island of Lampedusa. There are so many shipwrecks littering the coast of this island that the locals are hoping to create an entire underwater museum. These mysterious shipwrecks were discovered between 20 and 100 miles from the coast, in an area between Sicily and Tunisia. Researchers have been diving here for the past 15 years, talking to local fishermen and other people familiar with the area to try to locate all the sunken vessels, identify them if possible, and map them out for people to be able to find them in the future. The shipwrecks date back to World War II, when they were bombarded and sunk by the British. Within the wreckage, divers discovered an extraordinary number of war relics and artifacts, including things like cannons and bombs, and even vehicles like tanks and trucks. The local media reported that if these artifacts were to be brought to the surface, they could probably be sold for hundreds of thousands of dollars to special collectors. One of the ships that divers have managed to identify was called the Igadi, a cargo ship that brought mail and passengers back and forth between the small islands off western Sicily. It was torpedoed by the British Air Force on August 30th, 1941. When it sank, 44 people died and 65 escaped on lifeboats. Divers managed to salvage a bronze bell from the ship, though they haven't brought back much more than that. Most of the ships and almost all the artifacts will be left submerged, creating reefs and attracting tons of fish that Italy can then develop into their first underwater museum for diving tourism. One major hurdle, though, is that some of these sunken ships have thousands of tons of explosives on board, lead, oil, and fuel that is going to be quite the hassle to deal with. Number 9. Church of Corpses. The remains of an ancient church from the time of the Anglo-Saxons was just discovered in the United Kingdom, with a history that dates back 1,000 years. The old church was found during construction work to build a new high-speed railway. The construction workers had already torn down the old and outdated St. Mary's Church in Buckinghamshire, but they were shocked to discover an older, even more mysterious church underneath. St. Mary's Church itself dates back to the year 1080, with whatever was built before it being significantly older. The remains of the old church are in surprisingly good condition. The walls are mostly intact, the flooring is still there, and there are also about 3,000 bodies. Oh yes, there are bodies buried on the grounds, so many that it will take months to transfer them to a new cemetery. These people were buried during the days of the St. Mary's Church, although archaeologists can't rule out that there are some ancient Anglo-Saxon bodies mixed up with them as well. St. Mary's Church fell into disrepair in the 1880s and hasn't been used in over 100 years, which is why it made sense to tear the building down and build a train track through it. Nobody has been able to date this older church just yet, though it was likely built somewhere around 1,500 years ago, after the Romans were gone and the Anglo-Saxons were slowly taking over what we know today as the UK. Number 8. Shackled skeletons. In Greece, at least 80 skeletons were recently uncovered in a mass grave. While mass graves themselves aren't that rare to come by, this was a unique example because most of the skeletons were still locked up in their iron shackles. According to archaeologists, the skeletons were once victims of a mass execution. But who exactly they were, why they were executed, and why they were given such a unique burial, well, that remains something of a mystery. The remains were uncovered in an ancient cemetery near downtown Athens. The cemetery itself was found during the construction of a national opera house. It was a weird series of events that led to the discovery of the skeletons, though their story might be even weirder. Dr. Stella Chrysolaki says they were all executed in the same way, and then buried with respect. This means they probably weren't slaves or even foreign enemies. Rather, they might have been part of a rebellion that saw itself squashed before it could even begin. The skeletons come from between the 8th and 5th century BC, a time when Athens was under great stress. Aristocrats and nobles were battling one another for power. These dead men may have been supporters of an Athenian noble who tried to take over Athens in the year 632 BC. The rebellion failed. The leader named Cylon was killed and his supporters were executed. The bodies in the cemetery may very well have been this failed group of rebels. Number 7. Creepy ancient skulls. The Peruvian archaeologist Julio Tello made a shocking discovery in 1928. In the middle of the desert in the Pisco province, he found an elaborate graveyard filled with tombs. Within these tombs was a group of dead people with the longest elongated skulls that have ever been found anywhere on the globe. They are known today as the Paracas skulls. In total, the archaeologists uncovered over 300 of them, with many dating back an outstanding 3,000 years. There have been many theories as to where the skulls came from. Some say aliens, some say they are the result of a culture that practiced cranial deformation. They haven't been that thoroughly studied, and there is no straight answer as to who this group of people was. However, DNA testing was done in 2014 that shocked the world. It turned out that these skeletons contained mitochondrial DNA with unusual mutations not found in the human species, not even in primates. How exactly these ancient people came to have mutations unknown in humans is a complete mystery, with experts saying they may have even been the result of mixed breeding between ancient humans and ancient aliens. Or the DNA could have just been contaminated. But there are other oddities that scientists can't explain with the Paracas skulls as well. When skulls are elongated using cranial deformation, all that happens is that the shape of the skull is changed by pieces of wood or binding cloth squeezing the skull so it grows longer. But no other characteristics are altered during the process. With the Paracas skulls, there are quite a few differences, from strangely shaped cheekbones to different eye sockets. Even the connective tissue between joints seems different from ordinary humans. Perhaps this group of people suffered from some sort of genetic mutation. What do you think about these elongated skulls? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Number 6. Neanderthal hunting camp. An ancient hunting camp was discovered in Spain, where archaeologists say Neanderthals hosted huge hunting parties about 76,000 years ago. The camp was used as a gathering place for large groups of Neanderthals, who would then work together to hunt massive amounts of deer and bovine. The camp is huge, covering an area of 3,200 square feet. It could be the largest camp ever discovered in the region. And although it isn't technically a town, it might just be the closest thing that ancient Neanderthals had to a settlement. They would come together to hunt, then bring their prey back to the camp, where they would all butcher and organize the meat and whatever else the hunting parties brought back, like herbs and mushrooms. The hunting camp isn't the only amazing discovery that archaeologists have made in the region lately. They also uncovered an area where Neanderthals made stone tools and used fire. By looking at the leftover animal scraps in the camp, archaeologists were able to determine that they used just about every part of the animals they killed, down to leaving teeth marks on bones and extracting all the marrow. Number 5. Bronze Age artifacts. Hundreds of Bronze Age artifacts were recently uncovered in France. At a fortified settlement dated back to the year 800 BC, archaeologists with the University of Toulouse uncovered pottery vessels filled with rare bronze objects. 2 of the vessels were stacked to the brim with pieces of ancient jewelry, such as pendants, anklets, and bracelets that may have been worn by women and children. Yet another pottery vessel was filled with tools and weapons. There were decorations for chariots, pieces of riding equipment, and even small parts of a wheel. And finally, each pottery vessel was covered over with a bronze axe. But just what on earth were these vessels doing buried underneath an ancient settlement? Archaeologists say they may have been offerings buried in the foundation of the settlement as it was being built. This was a common practice during the Bronze Age about 3,000 years ago, as a way to ensure a settlement would be protected by the gods. The local people would gather up a whole hoard of treasure and then bury it in the dirt to appease the divine gods, thereby granting themselves protection from things like natural disasters and foreign invasion. Number 4. New species of human. Archaeologists have made one of the most insane breakthroughs in the past century. A new, previously undiscovered species of human was just identified in South Africa. To understand this incredible discovery a bit better, let's go back to 1974, when an Australopithecus named Lucy was discovered in the desert. She proved to be the earliest human ancestor ever found, dating back 3.2 million years. However, it was only 200,000 years ago that modern humans evolved in East Africa. At least that was what scientists thought until 2017, when skeletons and tools were discovered in a desolate wasteland in Morocco, dating even further back to 300,000 years ago. The point is that scientists still can't quite track down the evolutionary path of humans from 3 million years ago to today. This newest discovery is yet another mysterious link in the chain. Dr. Lee Berger was exploring a cave system in South Africa when he found a skeleton that didn't match any other human species. He named it Homo naledi, and nobody knows quite what to think of it. The skeleton looks pretty similar to a human, but it has a smaller head, narrower shoulders, and totally bizarre facial features. It likely existed at the same time as Homo sapiens, around 300,000 years ago, but for an unknown reason went extinct. This is additional proof that even as human beings were rising from the dirt, other human-like copycats were struggling to find their place in the world, and ultimately failed. Number 3. Mysterious gold mask. Archaeologists were blown away when they discovered a mysterious golden mask hiding in some Chinese ruins. The mask has been dated to 3,000 years old, and it comes from one of the most enigmatic places in all of China. The ruins where the mask was found are part of the ancient city of Sanxingdui in the Sichuan province. Thousands of incredible artifacts have been uncovered from this mysterious city, but the mask has proved to be the most fascinating. It was intricately constructed from sheets of pure gold. It also came from sometime between 1556 and 1046 BC, during what we call the Shang Dynasty. According to Ran Hongling, head of the archaeology department at Sanxingdui, the gold mask was probably placed over the top of a head carved from bronze, though the head has been lost to history. Judging by the incredible size of the mask, the head was probably enormous and maybe even part of a gigantic statue that would have looked down on the residents of the ancient city. In total, over 2,000 similar artifacts have been uncovered during excavations here. Archaeologists have found mysterious bronze figurines, over 140 elephant tusks, crazy-looking ceremonial vessels, weird effigies made from jade and ivory, and even a ceremonial pit that could have been used in ritual sacrifices. And believe it or not, archaeologists aren't even close to finishing the excavations here. This could turn out to be the most important ancient city in Chinese history. Number 2. The Bactrian fortress of Uzundara. A team of archaeologists from Russia and Uzbekistan had just completed their initial excavations of the Bactrian fortress of Uzundara. The fortress was built around the 3rd century BC, during the reign of the ruler Antiochus I of the Seleucid Empire. The purpose of the fortress was to protect the northern border of the realm called Bactria. Before Alexander the Great came around, Bactria was a thriving region in Central Asia, in what is today Uzbekistan. They were part of the larger Achaemenid Empire. The fortress protected their settlements from nomadic raiders. However, by 329 BC, Bactria was absorbed into the empire of Alexander the Great. The fortress ended up being occupied for about 150 years before Alexander's empire fell apart. The region began losing power after that, and it wasn't long until nomads from the north showed up and took over the fortress. Bactria fell, their fortress was left in ruins, and that was the last history ever heard of these people. As for the excavations, archaeologists were able to identify a primary citadel in the center of the fortress, surrounded by a high wall and at least 13 towers. It truly was a magnificent defensive structure. It just couldn't stand up against the might of the nomadic hordes. Number 1. Ancient wine press. Archaeologists working with the Israel Antiquities Authority recently discovered an ancient wine press that was used during the Byzantine era, which was about 1,500 years ago. The wine press was found inside of an ancient industrial site in Israel. It was a huge installation complete with a warehouse, floors decorated in mosaics, and all kinds of other implements. Archaeologists found mortars and millstones, probably used by ancient people to create wheat and barley. They found storage jars and cooking pots, and amazingly, they found a single gold coin minted in the year 638 AD, during the reign of Heraclius, the ruthless Byzantine emperor. The gold coin is actually quite interesting. An inscription was found on its surface, and the owner of the coin had scrawled his name onto it, suggesting the coin was of serious value. He even wrote his name in Greek and what might be Arabic. That way there would be no mistaking whose coin it was if he were ever to misplace it. I wonder what happened. Thanks for watching! Which of these amazing archaeological discoveries did you like the most? What do you want to learn more about? Let me know in the comments below and be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. See you soon. Bye!